Hello again. It is such a treat to have you on campus, very from our first conversation to all the prep calls that we did to convincing you to make this long drive up here. It's a real treat to have you here and share your wisdom. Would love to have you start with just a brief self intro, explaining folks how you became the co founder of Lightspeed and what you've been building ever since.
I was born in Oakland, so I am local. I grew up in the Bay Area, fourth generation Californian. I was a water polo player and wanted to play at either Cal, Stanford, or UCLA, and I ended up going to UCLA and playing there. And then after that, came back and all of a sudden, the Silicon Valley was forming. This is in the early '80s, and so I had to get a job. And I was an economics major. I didn't know anything about technology. So I got a job in tech just to learn how to talk about tech. Did that. And about 3 years in, I said, I sort of want to do more, get more education. So I went back to Stanford to get an MBA. And out of that, I got hired by this company called Cisco Systems that had just gone public. And I was the first person hired by Cisco out of any business school, and it was a wonderful experience because it was 6 years of just phenomenal growth. The company was growing 3x. That was a lot back then. I know it's not a lot now, but that was a lot back then, and it was a new job every year. And when people say, "Hey, what should I look for in a company?" I say, well, look for something that you're passionate about their product. And number two, a company that's growing fast. And why? Because if it's growing fast, there's huge number of opportunities for internal people. You don't have to start with the perfect job. You can just start with the company. And then when they're adding all these jobs internally, you have first crack at them versus external people. So anyway, I did Cisco. And then about 6 years into Cisco, I got a call from one of my classmates from business school. And he said, Have you ever thought about venture capital? And I'm like, no, have never thought about venture capital. I didn't even take the class in business school because I thought it was just for old people. And now it's for young people. And he said, no, you should think about it. And so, I had done some stuff with Cisco where I had started their acquisition practice and sort of did deals. And so, yeah, I said, I think I can do this. So it took me about 3 months to figure it out. And I decided to take the jump to venture capital. And the firm was called Weiss Peck and Greer, and you probably don't know who they were, and you shouldn't because we were probably, you know, not even a top 25 firm, but we had good performance and we were in the business and we had some, really good funds. And then, we had the crash of 2000. And in 2005, we sort of looked around and we said, why don't we start our own firm? Because a lot of the firms that had been ahead of us in the 25 had sort of either gone away or gone through a transition or whatever. And we said, let's start our own firm. We started Lightspeed in 2005. And it turns out not only can you start great companies during bad times, you can start great venture firms during bad times.
Thank you for walking us through because before the conference, we were collecting some questions. Actually, a ton of people reached out with questions. And one of the top questions to our topic about building a
Yeah.
generational company is this last point of actually, you mentioned it a couple times throughout, which is how to make a good decision. And sometimes it is what career you build yourself. Sometimes it is what problem space you're in for the start if you're building. Sometimes it's strategically how to effectively scale up the company. I would love to hear any sort of top frameworks that you oftentimes go back to help you make sure that you're making good decisions.
Yeah. I would say, I think back at people always say what your superpower is. And I go, I don't know that I have a superpower. I can't fly. I can't make metals bend. But And I don't feel like I'm the smartest person in venture. There's a lot of smarter people, but I feel like I do make good decisions and fast decisions. And one of the things we instilled in culture, and I do, by the way, agree, culture is strategy. Um, is when we started Lightspeed, we said a couple key things. One, we're going to have to create a brand. We're competing against people that already have brands. And so they're going to get first shot at a lot of things. So we got to somehow out execute them. So what does that mean? One, we got to get to deals earlier than them. Number two, we've got to be able to have a process where we can make decisions and have conviction about doing deals faster. Because back in 2005, not today, 2005, venture firms would take their time making decisions as to whether they wanted to fund something. And we said, well, let's just move faster and let's give the entrepreneur a yes fast. Um, and how do we do that? It has to be a team effort, meaning everyone's got to chime in. And, the whole concept, part of our culture was we win as a team and we lose as a team. You see a lot of stuff in venture capital, like the Midas list and all these things where we hold up individuals and we rank individuals. We didn't believe in that. We believed that we were a team. We either won or we lost, and there was no individual. And that served us right. So that helped us sort of get together when we were deciding on a company and to do an investment. We would have everyone chiming in and we would come to a decision and, not always agree. We had N minus one. If someone said no, the rest had to say yes. But it allowed us to have a format for saying, you know what, conviction is one of our key parts of our culture. Let's have conviction.
And speaking and building on top of conviction, actually, conviction requires a lot of work in advance to get to that point. And there is a component of making a bet here because you're
Yep.
working with entrepreneurs so early. How do you think about building the right process so that you can get to conviction?
Well, that's a good question. I think it depends on the stage of the company. The later the stage, there's a lot more data that you can gather and you can almost act more like a public market investor. But when it's a early stage company, there's not a lot of data. There may not be a market, there may not be a product. You may not know much about the founders. Um, you know, we were the first investors in Snap, and Evan was still in college. And my daughter is actually the one who showed it to. She was a sophomore in high school. She's the one who showed it to us, and we saw it, and we said, "This is really interesting." And then we got a meeting with Evan, and he told us, how fast it was growing, and what was our response. And part of my response was, "Well, why would anyone want to send pictures to other people that go away in 10 seconds? I don't get that use case." And my daughter's like, "Dad, you know, this we're just d," and of course, a lot of my partners did too. But then we had realized we had to take ourselves out of our biases and put ourselves into the role of the target customer, which is a demographic 13 to 25, right? Mostly females. And how are they acting? And that's one of the things that you find is you make decisions and you don't realize your biases. Like, I wouldn't use that. I'm not gonna make that investment. Well, maybe there's a lot of other people that will use it, even though you don't. And somehow you've got to be able to look at that objectively, figure out what that market looks like, and then make those decisions. So fortunately, we did the investment in Snap and it worked out.
I love that story because there is a component of how you think about building a firm at Lightspeed in terms
Yeah.
of the firm and the brand. And then there's also the how you work with founders to help them build their firm and their brand. Would you say that there are any big differences in how you would approach the two in terms of what you would advise founders differently? Because I saw at the very beginning that we have a room full of mostly founders. And so I think that could be very tactical advice for them.
Yeah, people will look at you and say, "Well, you're a venture capitalist. You make investments." And I feel like, no, I'm actually a founder who built a venture capital firm, and part of my job was making investments, but a lot of it was building a firm, setting strategy, hiring people, setting culture, all that kind of stuff. So I feel more like a founder than I do a VC, and I'm probably better at a founder than I was as a VC, just to be clear. And so, yeah, it's very similar. I mean, what do? You want to set out and create a culture. Everyone talks about culture. Culture. What is culture? Well, first of all, if you're the founder, the culture is going to reflect you. So you better figure out what you want. And you have to, in some cases, write it down. What do you want a culture to look like? In our case, we wanted teamwork. We wanted to be able to have conviction. We wanted trust and respect for each other. We wanted to win as a team or lose as a team. We wanted to make the pie bigger, not our own pieces of the pie bigger. That's called politics. You have to figure out what you want out. And then if you're the founder or the CEO or whatever, you have to live that every day. People watch you. So you either write down what you want as a culture or you act it or both, ideally. But people are watching you. And if you say, "Hey, we need to work hard here," and you're doing 8 to 5, guess what? People aren't going to believe you. If you say, "I value everyone individually," and you walk around the office and get to know everybody and their families and what they're all about, then they believe you. And if you have trust and respect for people in meetings, but if you're yelling at people all the time, guess what? They're not going to believe you. So again, culture is a really tough thing, but you as founders, you said it. It's all on you.
100%. And in terms of the founders that you work with, I'm curious, what are some of the top mistakes that you see them make? Because I'm sure you see patterns over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many mistakes. I mean, we could have a whole panel on a whole day on founder mistakes and VC mistakes too. VCs always like to talk about their best deals. You never see them post about the deals where they lost all their money. I would have a lot of posts. I'm just telling you. Um, I probably have more followers too if I post about the losses. I was thinking about all the darn mistakes I've made. Like, which ones should I talk about? Mistake number one: hiring a bad team. Hire great people. Don't hire people that you can control. Hire people that you're going to let do their jobs and they'll do them, right? And if you feel like you have to micromanage them, they're not good enough. So hire great people first. Number two, listen to the customer. Customer always has all the answers, right? For us, it's CEOs and LPs are our customers. For you, it could be a consumer, it could be enterprise, but those are where the answers are. Product market fit is not a permanent state, right? You may have product market fit, but then it can go away because people come into your market, things change. You always have to be looking at how you're doing with customers. Are you winning the right deals? Are you winning the best deals? You got to stay close to that. Keep the company financed, right? If you don't keep the company financed and you're in the lead, you can't always invest where you need to invest. First place in a market gets most of the money. Second place gets some. Third and fourth get practically nothing. So you want to be either first, ideally, or second. But if you're in the lead and you start getting challenged, you better have the money to invest, right? That doesn't mean overcapitalize your company. That's another mistake. You raise too much money, and guess what happens? You start getting complacent. You start getting sloppy. You start, forgetting about the stuff that makes your business great and efficient. So those are just some. There's all the others that are, lying, all that kind of stuff that, you rarely see. Fraud, sometimes we see it. But generally, you got to stay on top. This is a 24/7 job to run a company.
I love that you started with hiring a really good team because it's almost just by de facto the most important thing. The hardest part of that is figuring out what the best team looks like for you personally as a founder. Are there a couple of frameworks or ways in which all the founders in the room can think about how they can develop their own way for what a great team for that look like?
Yeah. I did remember your question this time. So, yeah, team. What does team mean? I mean, when it comes down to it, you're executing as a team. That means divide and conquer. Everyone's got a job to do, like a sports team, right? But when you come together, you're better than the sum of the individual parts. So you have to work together, right? And you need to stay focused on what's happening in the market. You can't get too far into what's happening in your piece. The best teams have, we use the word diversity. I use the word diversity really broadly, like that your background is diversity. Like, there's so many elements of diversity. I'm not talking about your race or your age or your gender. I'm talking about all the other stuff. Where were you born? How did you grow up? What were your parents doing? All this kind of stuff translates into how you make decisions and how you think about a problem. And so if you have people on your team that approach a problem from different angles, that's good. That's great, in fact, because, you can look at something and say, I don't know what to do here. I can't figure out what the right decision is. But then someone else comes in and will say, what if we looked at it this way? And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, you know, it's like what the chancellor just said, yes, if, right? Sometimes that opens up new thinking. So I like the idea of having a co-founding team that is looking at things from different perspectives. What that also means is, though, if you're starting a company with all your buddies and you guys have very similar backgrounds, be careful because you might miss and you might have a little bit of groupthink.
It's actually really helpful because I can attest to the fact that Barry not only says this, but he truly believes this because you were very kind. In one of the earliest mentorship sessions you even did with me, the first question you asked me was, what does your team look like? And what are their backgrounds? And you were explaining to me how you thought about diversity and said, hey, if you want to check your own biases, the best way you do that is by having a team of people who have different backgrounds who can actually help you check that. And of course, I know whether you're founder of a venture fund or founder of a tech startup, oftentimes as a founder role, it's very easy to be biased and to kind of get deep into, hey, this is what's working so far. So let me go deeper on that. What are some of the signals that founders should be aware of to be like, hey, this is when I need to check a certain bias I have about how I'm building the strategy?
Well, I think, I mean, there's lots of signals. I mean, the biggest signal, of course, is the market signal. It is stuff slowing, is your revenue slowing down or users slowing down. That's always a signal. I think you get a signal when you start seeing people on your team start to fight a little bit. Politics comes in. Usually that happens when a boat is rudderless. You know what I mean? It's like when people are losing confidence in where you're going as a company, then they start to wander a little bit off of your core mission and direction. And when that happens, you find that people in the team tend to go off in different directions. Then they start to disagree with each other and fight with each other, and sometimes even look for scapegoats. That's all bad. And it's on you as the founder or CEO. You've got to keep people focused on the mission. But if the mission's not working, then you got to figure out how to quickly get to the new direction. And we hear the word pivot all the time. Pivots are so darn hard. Very few companies, Slack was a pivot. So very few companies get to do what Slack did. Right. Most of the time when you're pivoting, you pivot into something, that's not as good, and it's really the beginning of the end. So, this is I mean, if you're how many founders in the audience? Raise your hand. It's the hardest job in the valley. Founder, CEO, hardest job in the valley. We need more of them, but, it's a tough journey, and it's a lonely journey. So as a VC, if I'm working with a company, I'm like, let's just talk. Let's talk whenever you want, maybe once a week. And guess what? No agenda. You just decide what you want to talk about. I'm not going to ask any questions. And sometimes just having someone to talk to and, that will listen and empathize is what you need. So there's all sorts of, I mean, we could go on forever about this stuff, but this is a hard job being a founder. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it though. Fractional founders too, right?
Yes. Well, Barry knows I'm a personal big fan of what I call fractional founders. These are folks who are in a full time job or full time students
Yeah.
and tinkering on the side. And their goal is to eventually transform that part time project into their full time startup. I know a lot of the investors, I mean, we had this conversation, will say, oh, well, we would never consider you. You're not full time because you're not serious. But I beg to differ. I respectfully disagree with that perspective, where I think if you're building something part time, and you're really seriously going at it, where you have a working demo, you even have early customers, and that's the best signal that you're super committed to it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts because we were literally just talking about fractional founders even outside prior to the conference.
I mean, I feel like most of the best founders were fractional founders. They were doing something else. Very few are just sitting at home with nothing to do and decide to start companies. Most of the time, they're at another company or they're a student or they're doing something, right? But they're so passionate about it. Like, I got to figure out how to do this. So I love hearing the fractional founder story. I told you I'm a fractional VC.
Yes, you
Yeah.
did. I love that. So I thank you for sharing that because I definitely encourage those of you in the room who are not already building something to share, have conversations with us. We're here to help. So if you're building something on the side and you're a bit shy, otherwise you're very, very much in the majority in this room. Where if you're tinkering on the side, we want to hear about it and we want to help you. Um, but on top of that, I was going to say, in terms of founders building and iterating fast and hustling, I remember asking you this question in one of our first meetings about how do you prioritize between everything that seems like everything is urgent and important all the time? And I remember you had shared a couple things that were really helpful. So I wanted to ask you that question again for founders in the audience that are always busy.
You ever have a day that goes by and you felt like you didn't get really anything done, but you kept busy? And I think it as a any individual has there's always this push and pull between doing stuff that needs to get done versus stuff that you want to do. And they're not always aligned. And so it's sometimes easier just to do the stuff you want to do. As a founder, I think you got to track your time. You certainly have to write down. You need to know what job one, job two, and job three are. And as a founder, those things are typically something around customers, something around hiring, right? And then there may be some wild card that's happening, a big deal or something. And so you've always got to know what one and two and three are. And then you should track. You go back at the end of your day, like how much time did I spend on one, two, and three? And you might surprise yourself. Like I actually didn't spend much time on number one. I spent all my time on three because it's sort of like a fire drill right now. So you got to track that. And, that's how I think the best founders, they just stay really on track. They know exactly what they need to make progress in. It's some things don't matter. Some things can wait and you got to be able to prioritize. And I think that's one of the key aspects of the best founders of all time is that they know how to spend their time and they can focus. I mean, I think Elon's like that. He knows where to focus his time. You can love or hate him, but the guy knows how to focus and how to prioritize. He doesn't sleep. Like, 'cause sleep is a waste of time. Doesn't have any houses because that's just a waste of time too.
I remember us having this conversation about the importance of focus. Actually, it relates to your earlier point about pivoting because you're pivoting all the time, that you're ending up wasting your time on a lot of different areas instead of focusing and getting really deep in one space. And I also remember you sharing this very tactile tip of tracking your time, say in 15 or 30-minute increments, so that at the end of the week, you can actually look back on how you spent your time. Did it align with how you planned? And of course, the more you do this, the better you get. I'll ask one last question that I want to open up for Q&A, so you'll have a chance to ask Barry a question, and then we'll have Milo bring the mic to you. Last question I want to ask is, are there any kind of lifelong advice or tips that you keep on reflecting back to say, hey, whatever I'm meandering or feeling lost or lonely, this is the thing to help recenter me, that you want to leave with folks in the room as advice?
And lots of advice. I don't know if anyone in the room has imposter syndrome, but I do. And sometimes I have to, you know, tell myself, okay, you can do this. You can do this. So, for all those people who have imposter syndrome, that's probably something that's going to drive you to success. So don't worry about it. I mean, first of all, you want to find something you're passionate about. Life's too short to have a job or start a company that you're really not passionate about. So make sure you're passionate about it. Don't do it for the money. The money will come if you're passionate about it, but be passionate about it. There's got to be the why is important. I always want to know the why about why you're doing something. Number two, work with people you like. Doesn't mean they have to be nice people that can't say no. They can interact with you in a great positive way, but you love being with them. You like being with them. You guys are a good team. You complement each other. Right. I was fortunate to have three co-founders I would like being around. And we complemented each other and we divided and conquered. And that's, I think, is part of our secret sauce. You're going to spend as much or more time with your co-founders as you do your significant other, right? So pick great people. And then I think, have some purpose in life outside of work. My work consumed me for 20 something years. And, you have kids and all this stuff. But then you get out of work and like, wow, I have this, need now for something to give me purpose. And I think the way you avoid that is you have purpose while you're have something outside that at least gives you purpose. It can be anything, but it gives you a chance to get out of work, decompress, and then go back to work. Um, you know, and and this is a long run. Don't burn yourself out. If you're always thinking about work, even when you're at home, you will burn out unless you're Elon, I guess. But give yourself a chance to recharge. Go on vacations. Go away. It's okay to take vacations. Right? You do great thinking when you get away from work and you're able to just be really creative. And so you got to get in touch with all that. Sometimes you have to think strategically, not just tactically. So it's all those things. And the last thing I would say is you have to figure out what you value. I don't value things as much as experiences. For me, the meaning of life is having great experiences with family and friends. And that's what I'm gonna optimize on as much as possible. I don't get 1,000 cars or 28 watches. I want to have 1,000 experiences. You should figure out what's important to you.
Thank you for your time. This has been very inspiring. What would be the best channel for founders like myself and others to reach out to you to get a pitch meeting with you? And in that communication, what are the top things that you look for to help you decide whether you want to take that meeting or not?
Yeah, it's not LinkedIn. I'm not on Instagram and probably not Twitter. So I take a lot of meetings. It's just email eggers@lsvp.com. I don't do new deals for our team, but I get you to the right people that do, and I'll give you feedback on your company for what it's worth. Maybe 5 cents, but I'm happy to, and I think the best way to get, some people will just take meetings. I'll take meetings, but some people you have to get a warm intro to. A lot of VCs, but yeah, I mean, you should, you know, getting feedback from your peers too. I would say find peers that are starting companies in adjacent spaces and run your pitches by them, run your ideas, and get feedback from each other. This is probably the most valuable resource you could have.
Something that I'm curious for your thoughts on is, I mean, given the name and what you said earlier, Lightspeed, moving really quickly. I mean, I think that's a pressure that all of us are kind of grappling with how we want to relate to how much time we're going to give to this and the speed of execution. Would love to hear how, as the barriers to creating and building and getting MVPs into customers are changing, how you're thinking about the need for speed from founders in this stage, both in what you're seeing be successful and where you're actually deploying capital.
Yeah, you notice we named the firm after one of our values. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's ever been a time when we have to move faster as a startup. And that's because you can. Like, you can now code products. We can code, we can get things. I mean, was it Cursor that got to $1 billion in a year? And we're in Anthropic, and I mean, the speed at which execution matters in this market. Ren, remember, you have to be first. You have to be first. And so if you're not first, to start, you better figure out a way to get faster than the person who is. If you are first, you better figure out how to move fast enough where someone doesn't catch you. And it's probably someone with more resources than you. So speed is important. What does it boil down to? Speed of decision making, speed of hiring, right? Speed of customer interactions, customer engagement. All those things matter. There really should be a class at Berkeley. You should teach it because, I know you teach at Stanford, but you should come over. Um, there should be a class on moving with speed. How do you move with speed, but not hastily? Right? What does John Wooden say? He said, "Be fast, but don't hurry." Right? That's what you need to do as a founder. So good luck moving fast.
Perfect note to end on because we'll bring you back in for this new class.